Hello everyone and welcome to the Hairenik Newscast. I'm your host, Alison Tamizian Muse. A standoff over Armenia's northeastern province of Tavush has turned into a war for the narrative. Residents of the village of Kirants have angrily presented to reporters deeds to their homes, which will be handed over to Azerbaijan. The Ministry of Justice responds that those deeds were provided by mistake. According to the Armenian government, Armenia and Azerbaijan have agreed to honor one another's territorial integrity based on 1976 maps. But while Armenia is ceding territory where it suits Azerbaijan, Azeri troops are not budging. Armenia's national security chief, Armen Grigoryan, is seeking to reassure the public and diaspora that Azerbaijan will make concessions as well. But in Baku, the Aliyev government and state-controlled media are telling a very different story. Let's watch a clip from Baku TV earlier this month.
Almatıda görüş 2 gün davam etdi və yekunda Ermənistanın ümidləri üzərindən növbəti dəfə xətt çəkildi. Tərəflər heç bir sənəd imzalamadı. Sülh sazişi üzrə danışıqların davam etdirilməsinə dair şifahi razılaşma əldə etdi. Və hər iki tərəfin rəsmi açıqlamasında vurğulanır ki, fikir ayrılıqlarının olduğu məsələlər üzərində müzakirələr davam etdiriləcək. Gözləndiyi kimi, sərhədin delimitasiyasında və kommunikasiyanın açılmasında hansı prinsiplərin əsas götürülməsi açıq olaraq qalır. Bu o deməkdir ki, Azərbaycanın sərhədin delimitasiyası, demarkasiyası prosesində Ermənistanın istədiyi Almata bəyannaməsinə istinad məsələsi.
Now let's bring in our correspondent Armen Grigoryan in Yerevan to break down events on the ground and in the infosphere. Welcome, Nari.
Hi.
Nari, you just heard that clip play. How does this contrast with the messaging we're hearing recently from the Pashinyan administration?
Well, throughout these years, the messaging has been that the Azerbaijani side is only doing this, creating this narrative for their internal audience, that this is not serious, that their Western Azerbaijan project is not going to come to fruition, and we just see that we see that the Azerbaijani side is taking every single step that they tell their people it's going to take, and our government just keeps making concessions. So now people have to even follow Aliyev's government's messaging, because their side tends to be consistently true and our side is consistently misleading.
Yes, it seems that the Pashinyan administration is not only trying to tell this narrative at home, but also set the narrative for the diaspora and an Anglophone audience more generally. Let's watch an excerpt from a recent interview conducted by CivilNet in English with Armenia's national security chief, Armen Grigoryan.
There is an agreement between the Delimitation Commission that Almaty Declaration is a base for delimitation, and 1976 maps will be used for the demarcation and delimitation process. And this is very much important thing. You have spoken about these 2.5 villages, but there are territories that come to us too, because the situation there is changing, and Armenia is also gaining territories in that context, and that becomes very much important for Armenia too.
Nari, let's talk about what's going on the ground, especially in Tavush, but not only, also in areas you and I have visited on the border. The national security chief, Armen Grigoryan, says things are changing. I'm not sure what he means by that, but he suggests that Azerbaijan will also be giving and Armenia will be receiving. Have we seen any evidence on the ground that Azerbaijan is giving up anything until now?
No, we have not had a single instance of Azerbaijan making a concession that would make this process into one based on a compromise. To the contrary, we see the Armenian government de facto admitting to having occupied Nagorno-Karabakh. And after that, of course, Azerbaijan is going to push for further concessions. And in the end, if you capitulate, and if you admit that you were an occupier all those years, you have to pay even compensation. This is just the process of international law. If the right to self-determination of Artsaksis is not respected, then Azerbaijan has all the rights to push forward with more and more concessions. And what we see here in Tavush, on the micro level, people that have to abandon, they have to be expelled from their houses. This loss of land we have seen before in Syunik. For example, when they, again, there was no reason whatsoever for Azerbaijan to control the Goris-Kapan highway. For many years in Soviet Armenia times, this was renovated and the upkeep was done with the Armenian SSR taxes, with our funds, essentially. And then suddenly, in one day, the villagers in Vorodan found themselves isolated because the highway, Goris-Kapan, was just under Azeri control. And same in Shurnukh, people's houses were given away. And after that, we have yet to see the government even compensate, build any houses that they promised to the inhabitants. And now it is Kirants' time, I guess.
Yeah, I think we should just reference the official statements made by the government itself. I believe the Prime Minister has confirmed that around 200 square kilometers of Armenian territory, or members of his government have confirmed that 200 square kilometers of Armenian territory are occupied by Azerbaijani forces until now. We are not hearing anything about the potential for Azeri troops to pull back from those areas, and on the contrary, all the messaging from Azerbaijan is saying that no, we're not going to pull back. We have the right to be there. We have a map up now. So briefly, we can see in red where the Artsakh Republic is completely occupied, and which, of course, when the republic was under blockade, it was recognized as Azerbaijan by Nikol Pashinyan. And then we also see in a very bright red, a stop sign red, areas inside the Republic of Armenia which are occupied today by Azeri troops. Now, this was all post-2020 war, so we can see all the way down in the south, in the province of Syunik. We can see kind of in the middle south, that's the Jermuk area, which was, kind of the epicenter of Azerbaijan's 2022 September attack on Armenia. And then a bit up north, we see the quote-unquote exclave. I believe that kind of the only Armenian exclave from the Soviet times that is supposedly going to come back under Armenian control, although it's kind of an island, so it doesn't seem to make much sense. Whereas on even further north in Tavush, which is where this recent protest turned national salvation movement began, we see bits of red where these again are areas that were Armenian during the Soviet times, are supposedly going to come back. And then we see areas that are going to go to Azerbaijan or in the process of going to Azerbaijan. But unlike the Armenian areas, the areas that will go to Azerbaijan are highly strategic. Nare, let's talk a little bit about the sensitivity of this area in particular. Why is Tavush important? Why is it concerning that Azerbaijan is kind of getting chunks bit by bit in this region?
Well, it was our best defense line. It was the most defensible part. The best fortified border we had was in this area. Another important factor is that the pipeline passes through here, through the Voskebar so-called enclave. The internet passes here too. Everything else is, oh yes, and of course, the highway. So if they take control of Boskepar, this is effectively going to affect the highway connecting to Noyamberian and then onwards toward Georgia.
Definitely. And this is part of the, supposed north-south transport corridor that, we hear a lot about, and the government is supposedly interested in making work. But again, on the ground, we see these territorial concessions get very dangerously close to this key highway in the north. And we also know that in the south, the Goris Kapan section of the highway has already been handed over to Azerbaijan in very strange circumstances post-war. And I think we should mention also that, there should be no changes to Armenia's borders without a constitutional referendum. And until that happens, it is illegal, and it is the duty of the state, and specifically the army, to protect Armenia's borders. Is this being pointed out? Is there any, how is this playing out? Briefly, it seems the government is not interested in following the constitution, but this is the legal fact.
This will definitely cause, when Armenia has a different government, this will definitely cause problems, because usually delimitation is done in such cases under a comprehensive peace agreement, which Armenia and Azerbaijan don't have. So it is being done independent of the parliament, independent of referendum. So in the end, this is going to have no legal basis. So any government, Armenian government, Azerbaijani government, it will be able to say that they don't acknowledge this, because this is, not usually the way you go about delimitation.
Indeed, and I believe that, the Armenia-Georgia border has not even been fully delimitated, and it's something that countries that are, at peace with one another, they do over a long period of time. And I believe that the speed and untransparent nature of what's been going on has taken a lot of experts by surprise. How I would characterize this is Azerbaijan is creating facts on the ground. A phrase made popular by former U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice in reference to the Israel-Palestine dispute, where there were simply Israeli settlements that became quote-unquote facts on the ground, and even if they were not considered legal, they became just that. I think just lastly, let's talk about the political developments that are going on. Of course, we've been following, kind of the micro, what's happening in Kirants. We saw yesterday the leader of the protest movement, Archbishop Bagrat Galstanian, returned to Kirants to try to show solidarity to the people. Can you tell me what happened in Kirants yesterday? I believe that you were in touch with some of the activists who went down.
There was a big number of policemen blocking the road, not letting anyone into Kirants. They required registration. And even the truck with bread and other supplies was not able to get through. So the villagers had to send a car to fetch the products. And of course, Bagrat Sirpazan was in the end able to enter the village and meet some of the people with whom this struggle, Tavush for the Homeland movement, started. But then the police illegally detained 14 people and continued besieging Kirants.
So you just said that Kirants is not even able to get in bread deliveries, that even normal traffic can't enter. So they're essentially under siege, but from the Armenian side.
Yes, they are under siege on the Armenian side, and the detainment of activists was completely illegal, and this is why they let them out, because they had no real grounds for arresting them. And the basis that they were references, experts said that this was not a real grounds for detainment, and even this besiegement is not really legal.
And
they even had public TV journalists, only public TV journalists, go in with the police car from Yerevan.
So that would be the state Armenian government-controlled television, which is loyal to Pashinyan's administration. Indeed, our own videographer was not able to enter, and no one else was. So they are effectively cut off from the rest of Armenia. So perhaps this is what delimitation, in their words, is going to look like, where everyone is atomized, individual villages are isolated from the rest of the country, and we kind of have a West Bank Palestinian situation that's steadily creeping across the Republic of Armenia. That's extremely concerning. Can you talk a little bit about the political front?
Well, Bagrat Sirpazan continues his meetings with different segments of the Armenian society. He met up with the soldiers, the military professionals. Then he met up with just volunteer groups. He met up with lawyers. He just there's this segmentation, and he meets up with all the different professional segments of the Armenian society. And I think this is important work, revolutionary work that should have been done a long time ago. And it's very inspiring because for the longest time, it appeared like only the governmental circles, if you wanted to be heard, if you wanted to be acknowledged, you had to pledge allegiance to the processes that are happening in Armenia, to this endless stifling of free speech, this endless concessions to Azerbaijan that has no real intent to live peacefully with Armenians. But now I feel like many people feel that they share the responsibility for the future of Armenia, which is a very important development. In contrast, the villagers in Kirants, for example, as soon as the movement moved to Yerevan, found themselves, isolated, disheartened, losing all hope. And one of them even said, "Who are we for them," meaning the government, "to tell us anything? We're nobodies. They just do whatever we want." And it is a very sad thing, I think, to feel for a citizen. One of them even said, "I feel like the citizens, the inhabitants of the Azerbaijani village across the border, they get all the rights and all the care, and we just get none."
Just to emphasize, so that our audience is not kept in the dark, the rhetoric, what's being said at the presidential level in Azerbaijan, I want to just show everyone a clip, and this is the Azeri President Ilham Aliyev meeting with reporters and publicly laying claim to Yerevan. Let's take a look at that.
Sir deyil ki, 20-ci əsrdə Azərbaycan torpaqları hissə-hissə Ermənistana verilmişdir. Əfsuslar olsun ki, İrəvan şəhəri Ermənistana verildi. Halbuki bunun heç bir əsası yox idi. Bu qədim Azərbaycan şəhəridir, Azərbaycan xalqı.
And that video and subtitles were done by journalist Lindsay Snell, who I think many of our audience maybe have heard of. She's been relentlessly following the Artsakh story, the Armenia story, but also closely tracking what is said in Azerbaijan by the state and by state media. So we certainly thank her for that. Thank you so much, Nare. for joining us, and let's continue to follow that story. Thank you all for joining. In our next episode, we will be discussing recent events in neighboring Iran. The president of Iran, the foreign minister, and other high-ranking officials were killed in a shocking helicopter crash over the weekend, and we will be having a guest from Tehran to break that down with us and talk about what is next for Iran. Thank you all for joining.